I'm Jacob. I'll be refuting the speech which the proposition was hydraulic fracking has many long-term consequences. The advocates' secondary claims were fracking damages the environment, fracking can create destructive situations, and hydraulic fracturing drains a lot of resources. Just to remind you guys of what hydraulic fracking is, it's a way to extract natural gas and oil from the ground to use as fuel and stuff like that. And what they do is they make big wells in the ground, and then they drill horizontally into a certain layer of the earth and then they spray water at high pressures to crack the rock, which then releases more natural gas. So you can get a lot more natural gas out of one well than a bunch of wells. And so regarding the first claim that fracking damages the environment, his secondary claim to that was that fracking contaminates our water. And in 2015, a team of researchers led by Yale University found that fracking does not contaminate water aquifers. One of the researchers who participated in this study was Avner Van Gogh, who had previously published writings that stated the opposite. That said that it does contaminate water, but now he admits that fracking doesn't contaminate the groundwater. One of the advocates' other claims was that greenhouse gases are released through the process of fracking, which results in damages to the environment. But compared to the most popular source of natural gas, or fuel, which is coal mining, coal emits 3 times as much carbon to the environment than hydraulic fracking. So if we switch to hydraulic fracking, it would actually, in the long run, do less damage to the environment than we're currently doing right now. So his claim doesn't really support his main proposition that it has long-term consequences, because if we didn't do hydraulic fracking, then in the long run, our coal mining would result in more environmental damage. His secondary claim was that it can cause destructive situations. And to that, I say that yes, although accidents do happen all the time and stuff like that, destructive situations can happen, but these can be prevented. One of the main situations he brought up was methane gas leakage. And just as coal mining injuries and deaths used to be in the thousands and tens of thousands, now they've decreased, and so will hydraulic fracturing accidents. And the methane gas leakage is a major issue with natural gas extraction. Although there are instances where methane gas is leaked during the process of hydraulic fracking, the amount of leakage is still less than that of conventional natural gas extraction. A study conducted by a research group at Carnegie Mellon University shows that there are over 88,000 conventional natural gas wells in Pennsylvania. These are gas wells that don't use hydraulic fracking. And those wells emit about 660 billion grams of methane gas per year. And the amount of methane leakage from the mere 3,400 fracking wells was 490 billion grams. And they produce 20 times more natural gas. So that means less wells, we get more natural gas, and it's less methane leakage in the long run. His third claim about that it drains a lot of resources, fracking actually still uses less water than our current method of natural gas extraction, which is coal mining. The International Energy Agency says that global water consumption for power generation and fuel production is expected to more than double from 66 billion cubic meters in 2010 to 135 billion cubic meters in 2035, and coal mining accounts for 50% of this growth. So if we switch to hydraulic fracturing, then we'll reduce the amount of water that is being used for our fuel. And so in conclusion, he says that fracking damages the environment. Although that may be true to a certain extent, our current method of fuel extraction does more damage, so that doesn't support his main claim that in the long run it has many consequences. Second, can cause destructive situations. These can be prevented, and it drains a lot of resources. We are currently draining more resources not using hydraulic fracking. So thank you.
All right, the structural stuff is all good. I like the information that you had on the first point about water issues. You've got a piece of reluctant testimony that goes along with that. That I think is a pretty effective response on that point. The issue of greenhouse gases, you do a comparison to coal, and I guess the suggestion is that if there wasn't the fracking and the oil and the gas that comes from that, we would be more reliant on coal. That's the argument that you're making. I do think you need to have a little bit of evidence on that point. The notion that it has 1/3 the amount of these greenhouse gases as coal does, I think, is pretty good. But remember, you do need to demonstrate that coal would be the alternative. That's what we would be stuck with in this particular situation to make your argument work really well. The idea that there are destructive situations, you basically just do a simple comparison. I didn't hear any statistical data that talked about the risk factors that are involved. You mentioned how it's gone down with coal mines. That's mostly asserted. I think it's probably true, but there's not any data that supports this. And your idea that this, in fact, would be the result in the same sort of thing with fracking and natural gases and oil reducing the frequency of dangerous explosions, that sort of thing. I guess that makes a little bit of sense. Your explanation on it I thought was reasonable. Your proof on it is maybe not quite as great. The other thing that I thought was good was the information about the leaking of the methane into the atmosphere on this particular point, that you had some statistical information that you did comparisons with that I thought worked pretty effectively. Let's see. On the other resources, there's some, we're back to the coal mining comparison. I do think that there might be other comparisons that would be used by the advocate if this were a debate that went on a little bit longer, suggesting, for instance, that alternative energies are the more likely place that people would go, and that if we weren't fracking, that going to solar or some other kind of renewable source would be beneficial. I think that's anticipating what their answer would be without necessarily diminishing your answer. I did think that you started a pretty effective summary, but you, like a lot of people so far, you kind of get to a certain point where you just go, well, I'm done, and you're bailing a little bit. I think that you could leave us with a much stronger impression. All right, thank you.